Hello. So this is a tutorial, I suppose, on the following dashboard that I've built. So I was asked to do something recently for a client, and I only had access to the Superstore data, but I wanted to show them some different methodology that I'd used. So the idea of this dashboard is to look at three or four metrics. So we've got customers, we've got the spend that they've made, and we've got the monthly transactions, and it's comparing shop A to shop B. So in real life, this might be shop A versus competitors or something like that, but it's just to be able to compare across retailers these three sort of main KPIs. So we've got the total count here, we've got the market share, so the percentage across each of those, and the change on the prior period. So whether they were moving up or down, basically. And then I've also included this line graph or line chart that would show shop A versus shop B on a particular date level. The bottom half is the customer loyalty. So essentially, we want to look at how many distinct customers, so how many customers shopped at least, in this case, twice in the monthly period. So, for example, if I was to change this to three, this is the number of people that shopped at least three times in the last month. And if we change this to quarterly, what you should see is all of the charts update. So we're now looking at these figures across the quarter. The line chart also updates, but so does the axes. So instead of looking at on a daily rate, so when we're on monthly, this looks at each individual day. So you'll see the 30th, the 1st, the 2nd, and so on. And then when we look at it on a quarterly basis, it's set to, I think, a week level, yeah. So we have the 1st to the 10th, the 8th to the 10th, and so on. So I want to be able to show that line graph across different axes, but also then this would update as well. So we're looking at in the last quarter how many people shopped at least three times, or I could change that to 7, 6, or 5, 4, and get that to update. And then we have a map because everybody likes a map. So I'm going to walk you through just how I put it together. These top compartments here are very much a repeat of each other. So I'm going to show you one, and I'll quickly show you the difference between the spend and the transactions. But ultimately, these three sections are the same. So once you've done one, you can repeat that out, and then I'll show you the customer loyalty section as well. Okay, so this is using Sample Superstore, so it's using the US dataset. So there's, that's the dataset that comes preloaded in Tableau, so it's something you can all do. Okay, and we'll just break it down. So if I go to a new sheet here, I'll just go to a new sheet just to show you on a clean sheet, I suppose, the dimensions and the measures. So this is the Sample Superstore that I'm connected to. And a couple of things I did to set it up, because everything needed to be driven by a parameter. So by that date field, so if we picked monthly, quarterly, or yearly, everything was going to be driven off that. One of the first things I did was to create a new parameter. So you'd go up here, create parameter, and create it from there. If I just right click and edit on this, I'll show you what I did. So I just called it date period. It's a string. And then I have monthly, quarterly, yearly as my three selections, just from a list selection. Okay, so really straightforward parameter. And I just set that up nice and early so that I could test it with the first field and then just roll it out, essentially. Okay, so that was the first thing I did. The second thing I wanted to do was get the max date, because I'd be working backwards essentially from whatever the maximum date is. I wanted to work that out in a calculation rather than hard code it into anything, because obviously in real life, as the dataset moves on, you want everything to update dynamically. So I wanted to design it that it would work if you plugged it into a real dataset. Now you could probably use the today function. So I don't know how many people would be aware of that, but if I just go in here to create a calculated field, so you have this function called today. And if we go over here and type it in, Tableau will actually explain what it does. So essentially it just returns the current day. Okay. So you can work off that if that's easier. If you're working with a live data set, you can work off that. That's much easier to do. Okay, in my case, the Superstore data stops at the end of 2017, so I just manually created a max date, and I wanted it across the data set, so I didn't want any of the filters like the monthly or yearly filters or anything to interfere with it. I just simply wanted to return the max date. So it's a level of detail, which I'm not going to get into the reams of it now, but it's a level of detail calculation, and it's essentially saying for the entire data set, so looking across the entire data set, what is the max of the order date? Okay, and that calculation there, that max date, we're going to use throughout. So they were the two things I sort of set up before I went to create any calculation. And then the next thing I wanted to do was just, if I skip back to the dashboard here, was I just needed to create, the groups is straightforward, shop A and shop B, I'll show you that, but I just wanted to be able to create these two measures separately. So you'll see in the distinct customers, I wanted to be able to calculate the distinct customers for the current period, and then obviously I needed, in order to do the change here, I needed to calculate the distinct customers in the prior period. Okay, so I'll show you the first one, and then it's really just a replication of that. So I'll go in here and edit. And this can look a little bit daunting, I suppose, when you first open it up, but it's pretty logical. So we'll just step through it. So you've got a count distinct. So essentially just whatever's happening in here, we're going to count distinct. Okay, of all of that. And ultimately we're counting the distinct of the customer name. Okay, so that's really all that first part is doing there, is just saying whatever this returns, just count the distinct of the customer name. And we've three real sections within here. So you'll see we have the yearly, the quarterly, and the monthly. Okay, and all it's doing is it's saying, so if the date period, so purple means parameter, so if the date period over here equals monthly, then do this calculation. If it's quarterly, then do this calculation, and if it's yearly, then do this calculation. And whatever it returns, we count distinct. So that's what it's doing. So just to walk you through, so we're saying if the order date, so again we're looking if date period is monthly, if the order date is less than or equal to the max date, okay, so we're taking the max date, and the order date is greater than or equal to the max date minus 30, so 30 days back from the max date. Okay, so essentially this is if it's between the maximum date and 30 days ago, then return the customer name. Okay, as I said, if you were using live data, the today function is what would go in there. Okay, so essentially you're saying is if the order date is between today and today minus 30, it would give you the same results. You see, I still get a valid calculation. Okay, so I'll just undo that. So break anything. So that's my monthly. So I'm dealing in a day level. If that's not the case, so if date period is not monthly, then it'll skip to this line and check this one. So if date period is quarterly, which it is there now, then it checks if the date part, okay, so date part is another function within Tableau. So it just essentially gets you to look at a date and return a particular part of it, okay? So as the name suggests. So the date part, so if the date part, the quarter of the order date is equal to the quarter of the max date, and the year of the order date is equal to the year of the max date, then count the customer name. So essentially it's just saying, does the order date fall inside the current quarter and year? Okay, so the current quarter and year, and then return customer name. And then the last one is the simplest of all. It's just saying, again, if the date period, so if the parameter says yearly, then if the year of order date equals the year of the maximum date, return the customer name. Okay, so each one is just checking logically to see if it falls between or is equal to a part of a date. Okay, in this case I used, for the monthly I was counting 30 days, so I was considering monthly to be the last 30 days. Obviously it could be the particular month, so I could repeat this, so date part month of order date is equal to date part month of max date, and check it that way. Again, I was conscious of building something that in a real life environment where you might be 10 days into a a month, you mightn't want just those 10 days, you might want the last 30 or something. But again, this is all adjustable, so that's just how I built that. So that's the distinct customers in the current period. And then I think just for argument's sake with the shop, I just created a group based off the segment, I think it is. It was really just to get to roughly comparable groups. Okay, so just put shop A as the consumer and shop B as corporate and home office. So that's all I did. So shop group goes on the columns, and then the distinct customer count goes in the text, essentially just a table. Okay, and that's what gives us our headline there. So that's our first one. And then the second one is a duplicate. So I suppose I'll show you how to do this just in case. So if I right click and duplicate, I get the count. So I'm just going to take that off. So I get the count the same as this, but I want to turn this into a bar. So essentially I want the shop group to be the color, and I want it to be a bar running across. So we can make that a bar. Okay, I think I put shop A on the left. I added in the labels. So again, at the moment this is a count. Okay, so it looks fine, but it's a count. I want a percentage, so essentially want to work out the market share. So for that I'll use a table calculation. So I can do a drop down here, go to quick table calc, and I can do a percent of total. Okay, so this is a 100% bar, so let's just drop that off and I'll drop the label back on. So you can see it's a 100% bar, so both of these add to 100%. And I could go in here and format and just tidy up the number format. And remove the columns and the line grids and various things. So that's all that is. It's really simple, just a duplication, and you're turning it into a 100% bar chart. And it gives me the market share then of the two shops, and the color coding is matching all the time. Okay, so the last little bit in this section here is to do with the change, so the period on period change. So if this is monthly, this is looking at the last 30 days versus the 30 days prior to that. If it's quarterly, it's looking at the current quarter versus the previous quarter, and so on. So in order to calculate the change, we need to calculate these numbers, so the total for the previous period. Okay, so the total for the previous period. Now again, this is pretty straightforward. Once you've built this first one with the date ranges in and it looking at the parameter, everything really is just a duplicate of that. So I would have duplicated it and then just gone in and edited. And what I did was, so it's the same structure. I'll just get it to look the same. So it's still a count distinct if date period equals month. So none of that has changed. And essentially, the only bit that changes is the middle sort of if statement here. So if the order date is less than or equal to the max date minus 31. Okay, so remember the current period stops 30 days ago. This starts 31 days ago and finishes 60 days ago. So essentially, if it's between 31 days ago and 60 days ago, then we want to return the customer name. Okay, this does something similar. So if the date part of the order date is equal to the same quarter minus 1, so again the previous quarter, and the year is the same, then customer name. Okay, so again it's just counting back a quarter, and this is the same. So if the year of the order date is equal to the 1 or the max date minus 1, give me the customer name. So again, very simple once you've done the first calculation to do this. And these if statements are really just a repetition of themselves. It's just figuring out the date period that you want to look across. And obviously this can get a little bit more complicated when you want to compare quarters across different years and things. But again, just as an illustration, that's how you could do it. So that gives me the prior period. And then I just needed to calculate the difference. So that's a relatively straightforward sum. I'll just make this look a little bit easier to see. Okay, so to calculate the difference, we've got the current period less the prior period over the current period. And I formatted that as a percentage. Okay, and that would give us the percentage change. Okay, So there it is. So you can see I've got the shop group up across the columns again. In this case, I've added in a symbol, so I can show you how I did that. So essentially it's another if statement, so it's saying if the distinct customer period, so if our current period is greater than our prior period, then return this arrow. And this is the ASCII character, so if you stick ASCII, ASCII, into Google, and it'll return these characters. So basically you can use these symbols instead of text. So that was relatively straightforward. It would just give me the symbol as well. It may not be necessary, you know, I'm coloring it green for up and red for down. So I think when I change this to monthly, one of them is down. So you may not need both. Again, it was for demonstration purposes, just to show you that, you know, you could do both. These are both dropped on, so you'll see the percentage and the symbol are both dropped onto the text field. And I've just put one under the other. You could put it side by side, if that works better for you. So that's fine. Either way is absolutely fine. So just to show you how that's done. So that gives me the percentage change period on period. And obviously then as this changes, it's looking at those if statements and comparing them. Okay. So that's that first section there. We get the total for the year, we get the market share for the year, and we get the year-on-year growth or decline. Okay. The next section I built was the line chart. So if we go to that, I'll just show you. So again, it's pretty much the same. The only additional calculation is the date level calculation. Okay, so again, what I want to be able to do was, rather than, you know, if I looked at this at a yearly level, I didn't want to just have one dot for the year. I wanted to distinguish depending on the parameter over here, and then show at a different date level here. So again, everything's the same. I've got the distinct count of customer current period. So this is the current period here. So it's comparing one shop to the other. So that's straightforward. So the only additional thing here is the date level. I'll just go in and show you this calculation. Okay. So again, this is a case statement, similarly to an if statement, the same idea. So again, it's just looking at saying, and when the date period, so again, when my parameter, it's in purple, when that says monthly, in this case it's date trunc, so it's truncating the date. Again, if you are unsure which to use and what they do, if you type date into here, for example, date trunc, and Tableau will explain to you what that does. So it truncates the specific date to the accuracy specified by the date part. Okay, so basically what I want to do was, if we picked monthly, I wanted the axes to show the order date at a day level. If we picked quarterly, I wanted to show it on a weekly basis. And if I picked yearly, I wanted to show it on the monthly basis. So it's essentially just stepping down. So rather than it showing it a year or quarter month, I want to be able to select these. And you can quite easily change that. So if for yearly I wanted to look at a quarter, I can just type quarter in there, and Tableau will return 4 data points, you know, because there's 4 quarters in a year. So I wanted 12 in that case, sorry, month. Okay, so that's what that's doing. It's creating a date level. I'm just going to take this off to show you what I did. So when you drag the date level on, again, Tableau will aggregate it up to a year level. Okay, so I have a yearly level here and a yearly level over here, and I only get 1 data point. So that's going to look pretty terrible in a dashboard. Okay, so you just change this to exact date, and you'll see now it's showing on a weekly basis. So as I said, there's the 1st of the 8th, 2017, or sorry, monthly basis. So there's the 1st of 9th, 2017, and so on. Okay, because it's a yearly basis, it's returning at a month level. Quarter was weekly, and a monthly was a day level. So this should be the 30th, 29th, 28th, and so on. Okay, so I really like that feature in terms of being able to display the date level axis on a different basis depending on the parameter. And I think all I did there was just take off the title. Okay, so nice way to use a parameter to update, the three fields plus the line chart. In terms of replicating that out, it's all pretty much identical. Um, so for example, if we go to the sheet here on transactions, you'll see here our spend, as I called it, sales. So I just used the sales figure for this. So you'll see we have sales current period, and if I go in to edit that, you'll see I have something very similar. So if the date period is monthly, then return sales. Else if quarterly, return sales. Else if, and then I just sum all that when I put it into whatever chart that I'm doing. So the calculations are almost identical. You're just changing which field it returns depending on what you're looking for. So if I go into transactions for the current period, that's going to be exactly the same. So in this case I did a count of order IDs. Okay, so that was the number of orders. As I said, I was just using the language of a retailer for my example, but it's doing exactly the same thing. Okay, so it's very much a repeat once you get it done once. Okay, so that's the top three. The sort of last section that I'm going to look at was just in terms of counting the distinct customers and being able to parameterize the number of transactions that counted. So for example, if we were looking on a yearly basis, we might only be interested in people who had 7 transactions. Okay, so we can see that shop B has different to shop 1 and so on. Okay, and that's what we want to be able to do. So if we jump to customer loyalty, okay, so this does involve level of detail. So again, the parameter, we'll start with the easy bit. So the parameter is pretty straightforward. So if I go up and edit that, it's simply just an integer, it's a range, and I set it between 1 and 10 and called it number of transactions in period. So nothing complicated in there. Obviously it'll depend on your data what those numbers might look like and various things, but a pretty straightforward step. So that's the parameter. And now if we look for the level of detail. So for this I built a distinct transactions per customers tab. So if we go in and edit this, so again, this will look, almost identical. I'll just tab this down just to show you the only difference really is that we've just wrapped it in a level of detail. Okay, so it's a distinct count, again, depending on the parameter, it's a distinct count of the order ID. Okay, so we're interested in how many different order IDs were there across the different time periods that somebody might select. Okay, and then it's wrapped in a level of detail calculation. So it's saying for each customer, so fixed is essentially for each. So for each customer, do the following. Okay, so regardless of what level I calculate it down, I just wanted to know at a customer level how many customers reach this target. So how many transactions has each customer had in the given date period. Okay, and then I created just a true or false, a Boolean calculation, just to say again for each customer the number of transactions is greater than or equal to my parameter for the number of transactions in the period. Okay, so again for each customer return the number of transactions, the max number of transactions that they've had, and is it greater than or equal to this. Okay, and that I added to the filter shelf, so I'm only interested in those that meet the condition. Okay, so they needed to meet the condition. I've set here the order date to be 2017, so as long as it's in current year, and then it's a distinct count of the customer name. Okay, so they have to meet the condition, which is set by this parameter over here, and if they do, I just was asking, can you count how many different customers meet that transaction parameter. Okay, so in this case, shop A, I've had 73 customers who've had at least 4 distinct orders within the time frame, which at the moment is a year. So I set that to a month. There's only one person across either shop who's had 4 transactions in the last 30 days. Okay, as a way to sort of look at customer loyalty or customer frequency or something like that. And then the map is the map. Okay, so that's added to the parameter. Somebody could come along and adjust this. So if it's a a high-end retailer, for example, you're not expecting to be in that often. Maybe 3 is a good number of return. If you had 3 people in a year to buy your really expensive suit, that's pretty good. Where if you're a coffee shop, you might be looking at, well, how many people have been in at least 10 times. So it's something that's flexible depending on the shop or the requirement that you might need. So hopefully that's helpful in terms of how I built it. I'll put this on Tableau Public, so you can download and see the logic of how I've done it. Thanks very much.